All right, good morning, everybody. I am not sure if I am live right now. My computer is freezing up, and the YouTube link is not pulling up. I may be broadcasting, but give me a second here. You'll see coming up. If you're there, good morning. This is Early Morning Bitcoin Talk, Crypto Talk with Bitcoin Brandon, Los Angeles, California. I can't see anything just yet, so bear with me. I will say this while this is still loading up. As a disclaimer, I'm not a licensed financial advisor to be giving financial advice. I read the news, give my opinion, share suggestions, and it is up to you to make an informed, intelligent decision on which direction you want to move into. There's 4 rules I live by in the crypto space to have success. Rule number 1, education is key. Education is everything. Rule number 2, never invest money you cannot afford to lose. Rule number 3, always get your return on investment back as fast as possible. And rule number 4, where do you see yourself in 3 months, 6 months, a year from now? What are you willing to do to make it happen? Stay focused, take action, and do not get distracted. There's so many things out there that can distract you in the space. You have limited resources. Now, this may not guarantee you success. It will at least minimize your risk. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the most that we can ask for. All right, I think this is up. Let's see, who do we have on the line? We've got Shane West, Mafoose, Lance Hunt from Ohio, Bethany from Seattle, Eric White, Nisa, Tony Pinkston, Ron Ross, Shauna Ross, Lorna Vasquez, Sharita Hill, Gina Muhammad, Melinda McAdams. Make sure you guys hit that thumbs up button as well. Okay, I think I'm all good. Here I'm Diana from Delaware. Shouldn't have any issues on the audio side. I'm using my experimental crypto phone, so this should not drop like my other one does. So let's do screen share. Yeah, my computer's moving very, very slow. I hope that I'm able to get through this morning. Technology can sometimes have a mind of its own. Share screen. All right, first up, we want to do is look at the market. What's the market doing this morning? The total coin market cap right now is at $130 billion. So it is really flat, or maybe I've lost $1 billion since yesterday morning, last 24 hours. Bitcoin dominance is still above 51%. Bitcoin is at 3828, so it can't seem to pass that 3,900 threshold. So this might be a good time for those of you that's doing quick micro day trades, might be a good time to sell and then buy when it bounces back down to about the $3,700 mark, and then let it come back up to 3,800, 3,900, sell again until it can pass that $3,900 mark. So even though the market's flat, you can still make a couple percentage points, or 0.5, 0.7. Do that a couple of times a day, and there you go. Let's see, Ethereum, Ripple. Market's negative for the top coins. Let's look at the best performers last 24 hours. Metaverse, the ARC, Quash, Ravane, Dentacoin, any top coins. PundiX is in the green, 2%. Still less than half a penny. It's a good bargain. Mobile Go. Tron, PundiX is a coin I think is going to eventually skyrocket to the moon. Why? Because they actually have a product that's out on the market that's being used. A lot of coins don't. So when I look at coins that I want to personally build in my portfolio outside of the top 10, I'm looking at what is their real world use case. So like MobileLink, PundiX, those type of coins that actually have a real product that people can buy and sell. So I'm long on PundiX. See, what about worse performers last 24 hours? Qcoin shares, Aurora, any top coin, Ethereum Classic still down 5%. Bitcoin Cash is down 5%. That means Bitcoin SV should be, yeah, there it is. Bitcoin SV is also down almost 4.5%. What's Bitcoin Cash is now priced? 162. Okay, it was at 180 something maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. So this might be a good time. Let it come back down a little bit more to buy. I will place my buy orders down here, maybe at the 150 area, and then have a quick sell order for maybe 165. All right, let's see the news. First up, Donald Trump. Now, why? Because I try very, very, very hard not to discuss religion and politics publicly, only because people are so emotionally tied to those two things that they're passionate about it. And when you're passionate about something, it's very hard to listen to or even entertain another thought because you believe the way you think is correct. There is no compromise. And anybody that believes different from you must be evil. They don't get it. They're evil people. No, they're not. They have different life experiences. They have different ways of viewing the world than you do. There's no one right way or wrong way. Different experiences for different people, different benefits and obstacles for different people. The only reason why I'm covering it because it is in crypto news. I don't know why. I haven't read the article yet to see if this talks about anything with crypto, but this Donald Trump blames Democrat House takeover for Dow Jones sell-off. Now, this does impact all of us directly and indirectly. Whatever the president does, whether you like it or not, there's results. Those results have consequences, good and bad. So how does what's going on with our government going to affect our crypto and our future? Well, let's just read the article. And I'm giving a disclaimer. I am not reading this in support or against. I'm just going to read the facts of what is being reported as, and I'm going to try to keep my own personal comment outside of crypto to a minimum. So Donald Trump blames Democrat House takeover for Dow Jones sell-off. What is a fact? There was a Dow Jones sell-off. That is a fact, okay? That is something that we cannot deny. We have to accept. December was December was the worst performance of the market since the Great Depression of 1929. None of us were alive. This was the worst performance in our lifetime. Now, how come when that happens, you don't see the media, screaming the sky is falling like they do when crypto has a market correction? Apple itself lost more in the last quarter than the entire crypto market total. Apple lost more in one day than the entire Bitcoin market. Why aren't we saying, oh, throw your iPhones away, it's dead and gone? Well, there is bias in the media when it comes to what they want to report on. So let's see. How you doing, Jana from Ohio? Marty from Hawaii. Okay. With the Democrats assuming control of the U.S. House of Representatives this week, it seems unlikely that the now divided federal government will accomplish much. Oh yeah, we're still in a government shutdown. Will accomplish much of note during the final 2 years of Donald Trump's president's first term. However, the Democratic House presents Trump with a new foil, one that he has already begun to make use of, blaming them for the stock market glitch that has seen that Dow Jones Industrial Average and other indices post their worst performances since 2008. Blame Democrats for the stock market woes. Writing on, where else, Twitter, Trump attributed the stock market disruption to the Democratic takeover of the House. As I have stated many times, if the Democrats take over the House or Senate, there will be disruption to the financial market, he wrote on Friday morning. We won the Senate. They won the House. Things will settle down. They only want to impeach me because they know they can't win in 2020. Too much success. Okay. While Nancy Pelosi only this week reclaimed the Speaker's gavel from Paul Ryan, the election took place last November, about 1 month after the Dow peaked at an all-time high of 26,828.39. Since that October 3rd peak, the U.S. stock market has endured a sharp decline, seemingly bringing an end to the decade-long bull run that set in following the 2008 financial crisis. Okay, so if we are looking at facts, the stock market started to have a turn in October before the Democrats won the House. They're not even in power yet. I think just factually, our policies overseas may have more to do with this than the Democrats taking the House, because what happens globally affects us. We just read the article about China. Trump tweeted just yesterday that his trade tariffs is having a economic toll on China, and that is true. If that was his intent, to negotiate by, it's almost like putting a sanctions on a group of people. But if your intent is on hurting the Chinese economy to make them come back to the table so that we can get a better trade deal, then you accomplish that. Here is another consequence of that. If the people of China were hurting economically and they're not buying iPhones, and then Apple turns around and reports, we just had our worst performance in 15 years, and then the stock market reacts to that, well, then your decisions for having a trade war with China is having another inverse effect. I'm only stating the facts. This is not political. Whether you're for it, agree with it or not, this is just what's happening here. Just like this is a fact. This is why I said that the crypto market is being manipulated. The crypto's high was December 17th, 2017. The very next day started a downward trend that's continued until now. What happened on that day? The CBOE came online, followed by the CME like a week and a half later. The futures markets came online. Institutional investors came in and bet against it. That's not coincidence. You can put a clear correlation between one and the other. I'm just stating again, facts. On January 3rd, the Dow closed at 22,686, more than 15% off its all-time high. The NASDAQ composite is more than 20% off its peak, which the tech-heavy index had set on August 29th. The S&P 500 sat at about 16% below its high water market ahead of Friday's opening bell. However, contrary to Trump, most analysts attribute the decline to other economic factors, including the increasingly controversial trade war, which, oh man, I'm so glad I read. I have not read this article yet. So because, we pay attention to what's going on in the world, geopolitics, education is key, everybody. So since I'm informed, I already knew this before I had to read this article. Yeah, it's a trade war with China. Will Trump ease up on Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve? I agree with Trump and the Federal Reserve. I don't know how that's going to play out. The last president to do so was Kennedy. That's all I'm going to say. Previously, when the Republicans controlled all the levers in the federal government, that is, Trump has set his sights on the Federal Reserve, blaming the independently run central bank and its chairman, Jerome Powell, for roughing up the market by raising interest rates. That's true. From another Trump tweet this week, on December 18th, he said, I hope the people over at the Fed will read today's Wall Street Journal editorial before they make yet another mistake. Also, don't let the market become any more illiquid than it already is. Stop with the 50 Bs. Feel the market. Don't just go by meaningless numbers. Good luck. I actually agree with that statement. While some central banking critics found Trump's criticism of the Fed refreshing, others worried that his one-sided war of words with Powell could escalate into the Federal Reserve Chairman's dismissal. If this happened, they said, it could have disastrous ramifications for both U.S. and global stock markets. And that is also true. Anytime you're going to make a major change, there are times where you take one step back to take two steps forward. It happens. Is where you got to have long-term vision. So if Trump is making these statements, I'm curious as to what is the plan afterwards. You just can't cause chaos and then hope that everything's going to put itself back together. It's like Humpty Dumpty falling off the wall. What is your plan to correct the issue? How are we coming out of this? It just can't be chaos. That's how my question with our government's, our foreign agenda right now with our allies and trade wars. What is the overall agenda? How does success look like? What does it look like? I guess that's the word I want to use. What does success look like? Because right now we're only seeing the consequences. Companies are going out of business. They're laying off workers like GM. People are losing their jobs. Businesses, because China is reacting to us, is raising tariffs on us, which is raising our prices, and businesses is hurting their profit margin, which means they have three choices. One, go out of business. Two, raise prices, or eat the if they don't raise prices, they got to eat the losses or fire their employees to compensate. There's consequences. So I don't know what success with this strategy is going to look like. Anyways, while some central banking critics, I read that part. If he were to actually be stupid enough to do it, it would trigger a massive reaction from financial markets that would be catastrophic to his entire presidency, said Daniel Alpert, managing partner at investment firm Westwood Capital, in remarks cited in The Hill. There will be all sorts of hell to pay. Of course, one tweet is probably not enough to predict a permanent shift in strategy on Trump's part, but it could signal a thawing of the president's icy relationship with Powell and the Fed. Here's what I'm looking at. If all this does play out this way, and the market does react negatively, it doesn't matter who's to blame at this point. Whether you want to blame China, whether you want to blame Trump, whether you want to blame the Democrats, we got to live with the results. And I think that something like this is going to have a boon for crypto. When everybody starts running from the hills, it's going to be a heyday time for those of us in the crypto space. So it's just about knowing what's going on in the world. Doesn't matter whether you agree with it or not, but making sure that you are in a position to benefit regardless. Know what the consequences are about to be. Speaking of that, let's talk about Apple. And then we're going to go back into, it's like geopolitics day. We're going to talk about 5 nations that want to get rid of the dollar. Apple loses almost as much as Bitcoin's entire market cap in one day. So has MSNBC and Bloomberg come out and said that, Apple's a bubble. I mean, it's dead and gone. You shouldn't invest in their stock. Everybody should dump Apple stock right now. Are they saying that? That's what they did with Bitcoin. Apple stock has seen upwards of $60 billion erased from its valuation. $60 billion. Do you know that is more than the entire network marketing world? All the network marketing companies. Amway, ACN, Mary Kay, Jeunesse, TLC, all of them combined is not $60 billion. So Apple has seen $60 billion erased, close to Bitcoin's entire market cap, suggesting that Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are still in the early stages of mass adoption. We are still at the beginning. I don't think that there's going to be another bull run until 2020. I think it's going to take another year for the infrastructure to continue to be built. That's what 2018 was all about. The last crypto market correction, major correction, lasted for 2.5 years. at the end of 2013 up to the end of 2015, going into 2016. Between 100 and 300, 400 bucks. 2016, it got up to 700. We're only 1 year in. Worst day plunge since 2013. Apple, one of the world's largest publicly traded companies, has lost around $65 billion of its market cap in a single day on January 3rd. Oh, that just happened yesterday. This pushes its market cap below $700 billion, which less than the market cap of rival Alphabet Inc. Global. According to CNBC, the company sees its shares trading at the lowest prices since July 2017, making this daily plunge one of the worst since January 2013. Twitter user Rhythm Trader was quick to notice that this daily decline in Apple's market value was almost as much as Bitcoin's entire market capitalization, noting that Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general are still in the early stages. $1 trillion down the drain. Cryptocurrencies have had a rough 2018 to say the least. The year saw about 700 billion wiped off the entire market cap, marking a decrease of more than 85%. However, again, you got to stop looking at it as the beginning date of crypto was December 2017. Right now, Bitcoin is 3 times or 4 times more than it has been for 8 years. All right. Pull the microscope back a bit. Looking at FANG, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Google, stocks' overall performance in the past few months, however, reveals that even the once red-hot tech stocks aren't exactly booming either. These 5 companies have lost upwards of $1 trillion from their all-time highs. So stop right there. The crypto market lost about 750 billion. The FANG markets lost over $1 trillion. Don't sweat what's going on in the crypto market. Given the current instability of traditional markets, senior market analyst at eToro, Maddie Greenspan, says Bitcoin could be seen as a safe asset by investors as stocks keep slumping while the cryptocurrency rises, he writes. Correlation between BTC and gold, the US dollar, and the US stock market. So gold is purple, dollar is blue, and the stock market is gray. A correlation of less than 0.1 is considered weak. If the stock keeps sliding and Bitcoin rising, that gray line could plummet, but then Bitcoin might be as a safe haven. So this is gold, this is dollar, this is the stock market. All down. Well, it says blue is, it's the US dollar line. BTC to it. So it says crossing there. But I'm really looking at the stock, how it's come down here. All right, and last up, let's see here. De-dollarization spreads. Now, this is very, very important to pay attention to. Geopolitics, what these countries are doing and how it's going to impact us. The dollar has been king since World War II. American dominance is not just because of our military might, but it's also because we control the world's financial reserve, which is the US dollar. What if the rest of the world no longer needs it? And they start to, and countries start to do things we don't like. What are we going to do? Right now, we say, well, we solve things through diplomacy. Do you understand what diplomacy means? See, the uneducated think, oh, that's just peaceful. That means we don't have to send troops in. United States diplomacy means we will blackmail you into doing what we want you to do. Period. How are we going to do that? The U.S. dollar. You want your people to be able to buy bread and milk and eggs? You don't do what we want, we will sanction you. We will put economic hardship on you to force you to the table, to force you to so-called negotiate. And if that ultimately doesn't work out, don't forget that we've got the biggest gun in the world has ever seen. But we don't want it to come to that, so just negotiate with us. Do what we say. It's good to be an American in the last 70 years. Not so much the rest of the world. Now, I'm an American, so, hey, I'm all about America and America's interests. However, we have to empathize and understand what the rest of the world's population is going through, because what they do is going to ultimately impact us. We can't have our heads in American sand. So let's look at what they're doing. I'm going to take you guys, I want you to become a visionary here. Imagine you're Russian or you're Iranian or you're Chinese. These nations, the Persian Empire, these nations are millennia old, their cultures. America is 242 years old. We are a blip on the radar screen. We have been dominant for 70 plus years. And you are of these countries that ultimately want to have their manifest destination, or what's that term? Manifest destiny back. They want to reclaim their rightful place in the world stage, independent of the West. Can you fault them for that? There's billions of people over there that are looking after their interests first, not America's interests. So if you were a citizen of one of those countries and you became a leader, what would you do if you ultimately don't want to be under the thumb of Washington? What would you do? My old debate teacher taught us, whenever you are in a debate, wherever you are in a disagreement and discussion with somebody else, instead of trying to beat them over the head with why you feel you're right, the way you win is by understanding who they are, where they are, why they think how they think, and able to argue their point of view better than them. It is then that you're able to win your debate. When you know their argument better than they do, I was trying to teach my kids it's ideology, by using Star Wars as an example. Those of you who know Star Wars Expanded Universe, the greatest general in the entire Star Wars universe is from the Empire, named General Thrawn. Admiral Thrawn. Okay, my son just corrected me. Admiral Thrawn. You see that? These kids. Admiral Thrawn. He said that real quick. Greatest mind in the entire universe. And one of the reasons why, because they go into detail, is he studies his opponents. He studies not their military tactics. He studies their culture. He wants to know how and why they think, because when you do that, then he can predict how they're going to think when it comes to battle. So if you want to be, a bit American, so to speak, understand where the other's coming from. Therefore, we can make adjustments to what we do to make sure that our interests are still met and will remain to be met without a revolution against us. I hope that makes sense. But look at this. Why these 5 nations are backing away from the buck. All right, let's see what they have to say. The past year was full of events that inevitably split the global geopolitical space into 2 camps. Those who still support using U.S. currency as a universal financial tool, and those who are turning their back on the greenback. Okay. Global tension caused by, here it is, economic sanctions and trade conflicts triggered by Washington. So when we do something, it doesn't matter whether you believe in it or not. Again, I'm not playing politics here. I'm only looking at facts and results. When we do something, there's going to be a reaction. So economic sanctions and trade conflicts triggered by Washington have forced targeted countries to take a fresh look at alternative payment systems currently dominated by the US dollar. If we didn't do these things, they wouldn't be looking for alternatives. You see the difference? Cause and effect. RT has taken a deeper look into the recent phenomena of de-dollarization, summing up which countries have taken steps towards eliminating the reliance on the greenback and the reasons behind their decision. China. Here we go. The ongoing trade conflict between the United States and China, as well as sanctions against Beijing's biggest trading partners, have forced China, there's that word again, forced China to take steps towards relieving the dollar dependence of the world's second largest economy. In Beijing's signature soft power style, the government hasn't made any loud announcements on the issue. That's scary. These are guys that they're not like, Putin and Trump in personality where they're going to, beat their chest in front of the camera. The Chinese are like, okay, you see what you're doing. And they start making plans and you don't know what's going on. The sleeping giant or the sleeping dragon. There are more students in honor roll in China than we have students, period, in the United States. You put that brain power together to say, hey, we're getting screwed by America. What can we do to make things in our favor? Okay. Like I said, remember, put yourself in their heads and think about it. I remember as a kid when I used to, if I wanted something, I would do something. And my dad would always teach me, hey, there's consequences to what you do. So before you do something, think of the consequences first. If you feel you can live with the consequences, hey, then, do what you're going to do. Like if I decided I wanted to go somewhere my parents didn't want me to go, thinking that they're not going to find out. And I think, okay, if they find out, can I live with the consequence of them taking my car away for a month? Well, that girl is so fine. Yeah, I'll live with that consequence. I'll take that punishment. She's fine. You make that decision. But there's going to be a consequence. So, all right. So in Beijing's soft power style, the government hasn't made any loud announcements on the issue. However, the People's Bank of China has been regularly reducing the country's share of U.S. treasuries. Oh, that's scary. They've been regularly doing it quietly. Still, the number one foreign holder of the U.S. sovereign debt, China has cut its share to the lowest level since May 2017. Moreover, instead of promptly dumping the greenback, China is trying to internationalize its own currency, the yuan, which was included in the IMF basket alongside the US dollar, the Japanese yen, the euro, and the British pound. Beijing has recently made several steps towards strengthening the yuan, including accumulating gold reserves, launching yuan-priced crude. Am I saying that right? I thought it was the yen. But spelled the yuan. I'll just keep on saying, reading it. Price crude futures and using the currency and trade with international partners. As part of its ambitious Belt and Road Initiative, China is planning to introduce swap facilities in participating countries to promote the use of the yen. Moreover, the country is actively pushing for a free trade agreement called the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which will include the countries of Southeast Asia, You know what that means? In layman's terms, they're getting the countries in Southeast Asia and the Euro-Asian Peninsula and making deals with each other so that they can buy, sell oil, gold, precious metals, whatever, without having to use the US dollar. If they can agree on whatever currency they're going to use, they don't need Washington. They don't need us. That's going to have a huge impact on the oil market because the oil right now is tied to the petrodollar, the US dollar. It's going to have an impact on our economy. Let's see. The trade pact could easily replace the Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP, to propose multinational trade deal, which was torn up, here we go, by U.S. President Donald Trump shortly after he took office. Again, doesn't matter whether you agree with it or not. It happened. So what are the consequences of it? RCEP includes 16 country signatories, and the potential pact is expected to form a union of nearly 3.4 billion people based on a combined $49.5 trillion economy, which accounts for nearly 40% of the world's GDP. They don't need us. One thing I love to try to tell my fellow Americans, we're only 242 years old. We're a blip on the radar screen. As fast as we've gotten here, we can be taken out. The Roman Empire lasted more than 1,500 years. Over 700 to 800 of it was dominant. And they're gone. The British Empire came and went. The Persian Empire came and went. Those that's really into Christianity, and you're looking at the book of Revelations, and it talks about the forces at the end of times that fighting each other. You know, son of the lion or the dragon, the sleeping giant. The United States directly is not mentioned. I don't want to go down that road. Let me continue here. India, ranked the world's 6th largest economy. India is one of the biggest merchandise importers. It's not surprising that the country is directly affected by most global geopolitical conflicts and is significantly impacted by sanctions applied to its trading partners. Earlier this year, Delhi switched to ruble payments on supplies of Russian S-400 air defense systems as a result of U.S. economic penalties introduced against Moscow. The country also had to switch to the rupee in purchases of Iranian crude after Washington reinstituted sanctions against Tehran. In December, India, the United Arab Emirates sealed a currency swap agreement to boost trade and investment without the involvement of a third currency, meaning the US dollar. Taking into account that India is the 3rd largest country by purchasing power parity, steps of this kind could considerably diminish the role of the greenback in global trading. All right, we've got China, billions of people in that country. We've got India, more than a billion people in that country. United States is only 380 million? Next up, Turkey. Earlier this year, Turkish President Erdogan announced plans to end the US dollar monopoly. And this is our freaking ally. End the US dollar monopoly via a new policy that is aimed at non-dollar trading with the country's international partners. Later, Turkey's leader announced that Ankara is preparing to conduct trade through national currencies with China, Russia, and Ukraine. Turkey also discussed a possible replacement of the US dollar with national currencies and trade transactions with Iran. Okay, For those of you who think, man, they're not going to survive without the U.S., how were they trading with each other before the United States was even in existence? They're only going back to how things used to be. Now, as an American, I don't like that. Why? Because that's what led to freaking World War I and World War II and instability in the world. The United States has also been a blessing on this planet, as others might see it as a curse on the planet. We haven't had World War III, have we? I'm just saying. Doesn't mean that we're angelic. But we have brought some form of stability that the entire planet has never seen before. Oh yeah, there's always wars and conflicts. That's always going to happen. But not like World War I and World War II. And we're about to lose that. When I understand Iran in India, in China, but Turkey? Okay, let's continue. Turkey also discussed a possible replacement of the U.S. dollar with national currencies and trade transactions with Iran. The move was prompted by political and economic reasons. Relations between Ankara and Washington have been deteriorating since the failed military coup in the country to oust President Erdogan. Some say the U.S. was behind that. It's been reported that Erdogan suspects U.S. involvement in the uprising and accuses Washington of harboring exiled cleric Fethullah Gulen, whom Ankara blames for masterminding the coup. The Turkish economy sank after Washington introduced economic sanctions over the arrest of U.S. evangelical pastor Andrew Brunson on terrorism charges in relation to the uprising. Erdogan has repeatedly slammed Washington for unleashing a global trade war, sanctioning Turkey, and trying to isolate Iran. The NATO members' decision to buy Russian S-400 missile systems also added fuel to the fire. Wait. They bought missiles from Russia? I didn't know that. I knew Iran did. I knew India was. But Turkey did as well? Moreover, Turkey is trying to ditch the dollar in an attempt to support its national currency, the lira. Well, the lira has lost nearly half of its value against the greenback over the past year. The currency plunge was exacerbated by soaring inflation and increasing prices for goods and services. Iran. A triumphant return of Iran to the global trading arena did not last long. Shortly after winning the U.S. presidential election, Donald Trump opted to withdraw from the 2015 nuclear deal signed between Tehran and a group of nations, including the UK, US, France, Germany, Russia, China, and the EU. The oil-rich nation has once again become a target for severe sanctions resumed by Washington, which has also threatened to introduce penalties against any country that would violate the embargo. The punitive measures ban business deals with the Islamic Republic and crack down on the country's oil industry. Sanctions have forced Tehran to look for alternatives to the US dollar. There's that word again, forced. Sanctions force them as payment for its oil exports. Iran clinched a deal for oil settlements with India using the Indian rupee. It also negotiated a barter deal with neighboring Iraq. The partners are also planning to use the Iraqi dinar, that's still around, for mutual transactions to reduce reliance on the US dollar amid banking problems connected to US sanctions. I guess back in the late 90s and the early 2000s, you know, everybody will say, oh, you got to get the Iraqi dinar. It's going to go through the moon one day. I guess that time's about to happen. It's about to come back. Now, make no mistake, the reason why we have sanctions on Iran, because Iran is no friend of the United States, is because we do not want them producing freaking nuclear weapons and being a threat on the peninsula and pointing them directly at Israel. which is exactly what they're going to do. And we all agree on that. The disagreement comes in how to contain them. Obama did a deal that was, in theory, stopped Iran from developing nuclear. We don't believe, the word that Iranian is going to actually live up to that long term. The critics say that all we did was kick the can down the road. We're going to have to revisit it again, but for the time being. And at the same time, Iran started to thrive again. But then you have the other side that says, well, if we are tough on them and eliminate that deal and go back to sanctions on them, then we're going to force them to find an alternative to get around our sanctions, which means our diplomacy will no longer work. They're going to speed up producing nuclear weapons because they feel that one day the United States, once we realize that sanctions aren't going to work, what do we do next? We bring in our big, bad military. So they're going to speed up their military development, their nuclear weapons, as a deterrent against the United States. The United States is going to try to say, we need to stop you from being able to have the ability to be a deterrent against us, so we will invade. It's a catch-22. It really is. Sanctions have forced Tehran to look for alternatives. They clinched the deal with oil settlements with India. They're also negotiating a barter deal with neighboring Iraq. The partners are also planning to use the Iraqi dinar. Now, here's the thing. They've been mortal enemies for a long time, but they've also been friends for decades, Iraq and Iran. I don't have the time to go into the history. Iraq and Iran used to be prosperous nations. Then you have the Iranian Revolution. You have the Iraq going to war with them in the 80s with Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein, who was actually backed by the United States. Remember the Iran-Contra? Every action has a reaction. Russia. President Vladimir Putin said the U.S. is making a colossal strategic mistake by undermining confidence in the dollar. Putin has never called for restricting dollar transactions or banning the use of U.S. currency. However, Russian Finance Minister Anton Siluanov said earlier this year that the country had to dump its holdings of U.S. treasuries in favor of more secure assets, such as the ruble, the euro, and precious metals. The country has already taken several steps towards de-dollarizing the economy due to the constantly growing burden of sanctions that have been introduced since 2014 over a number of issues. Russia has developed a national payment system as an alternative to SWIFT, Visa, and MasterCard after the U.S. threatened tougher new sanctions that would target Russia's financial system. So far, Moscow has managed to partially phase out the greenback from its exports, signing currency swap agreements with a number of countries, including China, India, and Iran. Russia has recently proposed using the euro instead of the U.S. dollar in trade with the European Union. Once a top 10 holder of U.S. sovereign debt, Russia has all but eliminated its holdings of U.S. treasuries. Moscow has used the money to boost the nation's foreign reserves and to build up its gold stockpile to stabilize the ruble. Now, this article was written in zerohedge.com, and what I find interesting is not once did they mention crypto. Get out of here. First of all, Russia is not trying to use the freaking euro instead of the dollar. They're getting into crypto. Why? I'm curious as to why they omitted this fact. That they're creating new currency. They're going to create their own state-backed currencies and make deals with each other. This danced around that whole issue, but I understand why. It's all good. We know what's really going on. But you need to understand the geopolitics of what's going on around the world, Because here's the ultimate thing. How is that going to impact us? We are operating on something that is not sustainable. We cannot continue on this debt living process for long. What's propping us up is a world reliance on the US dollar. That's what's propping us up. But what happens when the world no longer relies on the US dollar? You know what happens to us? Venezuela, Zimbabwe, Greece. That can't happen in America. Oh, it can't? You weren't alive during the Great Depression. You didn't see the bread lines and then the Dust Bowl that hit us. Know your history. History tends to repeat itself by those who are ignorant to know the past. Each generation seems to want to do the same as the previous or skip a generation. But you and I can prepare for the inevitable. And what do I mean by the inevitable? I'm starting to see, let me go back to that Donald Trump article. I'm starting to see this more and more and more. For example, man who called Dow 2000 prediction, famed economist, why a crash is simply inevitable at this point. Inevitable. Where's that other one I saw here? Apple plunged 10% in hours and the firm still doesn't know the root issue. Yeah, we know the root issue. I don't know where I found that other one. Is it in the Apple article? But anyways, we're starting to see more and more economists are predicting that we're in for a huge financial crisis coming up very soon. All right, that's all for this morning. Today is Friday, so there will be no crypto talk tonight, no late night crypto talk, unless something major happens. Well, with that, thank you guys for joining us, listening in. Get educated, get positioned, get KGX. Oh yeah, let me show you guys this. If you haven't seen. We're doing our Bitcoin boot camp. Tickets are on sale now. Seattle's up first, followed by Atlanta and then Tampa. We're coming to a city near you. So you can also, I'll put this link that you can go ahead and get your tickets. Friday night is free, by the way. So you can come on out Friday night. All right, let me put this link in the chat box. No, come on, sis. Don't move too slow for me. Anyways, I'm looking forward to coming to Seattle at the end of this month, bringing crypto education to the community. And then Atlanta 2 weeks later, followed by Tampa. So as soon as this pops up, I can, it won't let me add. Come on. System moving too slow. Or anyways, I will be putting it up in future crypto talks. We also have a dedicated page. Who's blowing me up? We have a dedicated page as well for all of our events. I will get that to you guys. So anyways, hope you guys have a great day. We'll see you all later on. Bitcoin Brandon out. God bless. Bye-bye.